Suspense is considered as the language of visual storytelling. Recently, I have been watching the thrillers of Alfred Hitchcock, and I am fascinated by the way he used suspense in his films. Hitchcock had used suspense for a variety of things, from building tension to engagingly moving the story forward, and even for exposition. In my last video, I didn't get much time to talk about The Rear Window. That film has stuck into my mind ever since I watched it. The fact that the whole film is shot in that little room is so fascinating and exciting for me. Hitchcock shot the film mostly from the perspective of our protagonist and used suspense as a visual language to tell the story. This is why I think that suspense is the most engaging and natural way of telling the story. Once Hitchcock famously said that there is no terror in the bank, only in the anticipation of it. In one of these interviews, he also explains that. So I am going to take two scenes from The Rear Window to understand that how Alfred Hitchcock used suspense to build the tension. The first scene is the one where Lisa goes into the apartment of Thorwald to get the evidence that he killed his wife. Then Jeff called the police and Thorwald found Lisa.
Oh no. Oh no. What?
Then the police came and we get a moment of relief. Now if you think of the whole sequence, so it is just made up of the action and reaction shots. But the unique thing is the camera angle. Hitchcock shot it from the perspective of Jeff, and by putting his reaction shots in the middle of the sequence, he makes audience feel what Jeff was feeling in that moment. I know this is very simple and basic technique that you probably know, but look at the way he used it. Like literally, the film is almost 70 years old, and the technique that Hitchcock used, we see it in every other film nowadays. But still, when we look at this scene, it feels like we saw something which is out of the box. So another scene that I am going to talk about came after this Lisa scene, when Jeff sees that Thorwald wasn't in this apartment, and then he receives an unknown call.
Tom, I think Thorwald's left. I don't. Hello.
Then we hear footsteps slowly getting closer, and Jeff is alone in his apartment with his fractured leg. Then the light in the hallway turned off. Jeff then tries to buy some time by using his flashlights. Then the police came and they saved Jeff. Then, as Hitchcock said, he gives audience their moment of relief. Now this is an impressive scene. Hitchcock totally puts audience at the place of Jeff by using elements like Thorwald wasn't home, the phone call, and the footsteps from the perspective of Jeff to build the anticipation. Beside these two examples from The Rear Window, I also want to talk about some other scenes from the movies of Hitchcock to show you some other ways of using suspense. From our previous examples, it became clear that suspense is natural and engaging way of telling the story. So Hitchcock also used it just to move the story forward, and the example of this is the Psycho's runaway scene. In that scene, when Marion runs away after stealing the money from her employer, Hitchcock first shows her thoughts by voiceover.
Of course, I'm glad to see you. I always am. What is it, Marion?
Then her boss finds her leaving the town. After that, she slept in that car and a cop comes to her just to ask questions. But because of her desperate behavior, he gets suspicious.
Is anything wrong?
Of course not. Am I acting as if there's something wrong?
Frankly, yes.
Then she desperately gets the paper to read, and the cop also arrived there. Again, her weird behavior with the salesman made him suspicious. She didn't bargain with him. Then she also forgot her luggage.
Just put it in here, please. Thank you.
And then again we listened to her thoughts while she was driving. If you see, the common thing between this scene and the previous one is that he's showing us the story from the perspective of protagonist so that we can feel what they are feeling, and this technique works. We do feel the same emotions. In this case, Hitchcock used the boss, police officer and the salesman to create suspense just to hook us and engagingly move the story forward, because as we know, this scene has nothing to do with the actual story of the film. Besides this, Hitchcock also used suspense for exposition. In Vertigo, when John's friend asks him to spy on his wife, then there is a sequence of John following Madeline in which Hitchcock mainly used action-reaction shots to give the information. Like in the restaurant scene, the way John looks at her shows that he's attracted towards her. Then the series of action-reaction shots continues, which tells us that she buys flower, then goes to the cemetery. In the cemetery, John writes down the name of the person whom she came to visit. Then Madeline goes into the museum where she has been staring at the painting of a woman. The flowers in the painting are similar with the flowers that Madeline has. Her hairs are also like the lady in the painting. So this is how Hitchcock used suspense in different ways. This is why he was known as the master of suspense. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you in the next video.